I was a photojournalist working for the CBS affiliate KWTV Channel 9 in Oklahoma City. And on the day of the bombing, I was going to work, regular day, worked 9 to 6, was walking in the parking lot, heard a loud explosion. And we were 5 miles away from downtown. And I felt a push of air. You heard the explosion, felt the push of air, and immediately looked back, and there's black smoke just billowing from downtown. And so I knew, obviously, something was what happened. Ran inside the building, talked to our assignments editor. I said, Chad, something big just blew up downtown. Get me a reporter, we need to go. And so I grabbed a reporter, Randy Renner, who's a phenomenal reporter, writer, and we zoomed down Broadway Extension, we're doing about 95 miles an hour, just trying to get through, because you're seeing the scene as you're driving. It's very obvious. And we exited on 6th, we went to 6th, and we tried to drive closer to the scene, but the glass and debris was everywhere, all over the roadway. So we had to park about a block away, grabbed my gear, and we went to 6th and Robinson and stopped along the way, and there was just destruction everywhere. Complete fronts of buildings were collapsed and gone, fallen out. Bloody people were coming out of buildings, being carried, being escorted, and we made it right around the corner, and the building is here in 6th and Robinson, and right around the corner, and we just see the Murrah building, and half of it's gone. And at that point, you just, you go into work mode. And at that point in my life, as far as a career in news, as a photojournalist, I covered everything from presidential campaigns, floods, fires, tornadoes, earthquakes. I mean, you name it, we've done it at that point. And so you just go into work mode, which sounds kind of cold, but it's the responsibility of a journalist, a photojournalist, to document things and talk to people. And that's what we do, and that's what we did during the bombing.
Sir, can you tell me what happened?
I don't know what happened, just a blast.
What were you two doing? Who did you run into? Tell me before, during, and after you can.
Just sitting at my desk working. All of a sudden, an explosion, roof caved in, and started trying to find people that I worked with.
So how did that day kind of unfold? Like, after the initial explosion, like you said, you went into work mode. What did that look like for you?
I've been asked that a lot. You know, how were you able to cover that? Up until that point, we'd covered several, if not many, disaster drills with law enforcement, fire departments, first responders, the military. We'd done a lot of that, and so you just keep the camera rolling, and you document everything that's going on. You interview people, which at the time, I think somebody who's not news would be very, very, very awkward. But if somebody has been in an incident and they're covered in blood, and they're still, able to talk to you, as a journalist, you're gonna ask them questions. What happened? Where were you? And that didn't make it easy, but you just do it. That's your job. And it was for 2 weeks. We were there for 2 weeks. I was there for 2 weeks, 12, 16-hour days, covering press conferences with the medical examiner, with the FBI, with local law enforcement, every day. And looking back on the footage, it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me until 2 weeks later, when we were able to get back into our regular routine. And I had a group of racquetball buddies. Almost every night and weekend we played racquetball, and a good bunch of guys. And I believe it was on a Monday evening, and I finally showed up at the Y, and the guys were like, "Where you been?" And I said, "I've been at the site." and they said, did you hear about Larry? And I said, no, what? And Larry Turner was one of my racquetball buddies, and he worked for the Department of Defense, and they said he was in the building. And I knew what that meant. And that's when probably kind of for the first time in my career, it really hit home. And he was a big man, always laughed, always smiled, always gave me a hard time, in a good way, and I gave it right back. But father of two, grandchild, great career, a wonderful marriage, and I told the guys, I said, I gotta go home. I can't do this. And so I went home, and I think, like I said, for the first time in my career, I was really personally involved in the situation. And I just went to my office that we had at our house, and I just closed the door and sat and tried to reflect on what had happened. And that's when it really hit home. And then it turns out that 3 of the surviving children of the 6, the miracle babies, 2 of them lived in our neighborhood, and 1, his grandparents lived in our neighborhood. And I ended up going to their homes and doing interviews later on with the moms and the dads and the grandparents. And then there's a well-known shot of an older man on a ladder coming down the building. One of the few people that's actually survived on the upper floors. He lived in our neighborhood 1 street away. But you know, obviously when you're there at the scene, you don't know any of this. And then another racquetball buddy of mine, Jim Ramsey, was with the Oklahoma City Police Department. He's in the video. And so it took a while for it to hit home, but that I can't believe it's been 30 years. 30 years.
So a lot's changed in 30 years. How, if you experience that today, how do you think it would be different from how it was 30 years ago?
The media coverage would be a lot different because of technology, but the actual documentation of the event with a good photojournalist and a good journalist, it should not change. You're still going to have to document what's going on and report. And that's what you just shut off any emotion as best you can, and you go into reporting mode and documenting mode, and you get the video, you get the interviews, and you do your live shots, and it shouldn't be different in that capacity. Emotionally, you just have to separate yourself from the situation, and it's not easy, but it's almost like you can hide behind the camera and not actually be involved, even though you are involved. But it's just that's what you do.
So you said you had covered other destructive events and done drills. How do you think that actually living that experience and being on site for those 2 weeks, how do you think that changed the trajectory of your life, or maybe your viewpoint on things?
I don't know that it changed me, because in our line of work, we do a lot of that coverage, and you just have to learn or accept that you're not going to be able to change something after it's happened, and then you have a responsibility to show other people what has happened and the result of, you know, bad decisions, hate, whatever it may be, especially with the Oklahoma City bombing. It was such a useless act that you would kill 19 children and 168 total people, and 700 people were injured. And there were like 300 and some odd buildings or businesses that were damaged. I mean, all for an act against the government, and the lives it affected. Thousands of people were affected by that event. And even today, anything like that happens, it affects thousands of people, and I don't think it changed me, but it just, it brings you to the forefront of just some of the evil that can happen in the world. And you're right there. And you just, you could maybe take a moment while you're looking at something like that, and you're like, God, how did they do that? I mean, why? And the other aspect, I will say this, and I wasn't surprised. The goodness, the courage, the compassion of the people of Oklahoma and around the country just was drawn to that site, drawn to it. To this day, it's drawn to that site. And I wasn't surprised, because we were in Oklahoma for 18 years, grew up in Texas. You get to know people and their ways. And maybe we're different than other parts of the country, the world, but I mean, people just pulled together and they're like, I got you. They didn't care if the news media, law enforcement, first responders, victims' family members, they were there. I mean, they came out of the woodwork in support. Actors, Garth Brooks got actively involved in things. And in a really bad way, it showed you the goodness of people. But I wasn't surprised, because, having been there as long as I had, everybody pulled together and supported each other. And it was that, if anything good came out of a horrible situation, it was that. It showed the world the goodness of people in our country, in Oklahoma and all around the country.
Are there any moments during those 2 weeks that really just stick out to you, and that when you think about the day or the times as a whole, that those memories are the first ones that come to the forefront?
The one that gets me every single time is the little boy that I was videotaping as he was being carried by an EMT tech. And I mean, I'm like 2 feet away from him. And as the woman goes to set him down, his little right hand is on her shoulder, and he grabs her shoulder, and you see it as he gets lower and lower, you see that hand just tighten. And he's like, don't let me go. Don't let me go. Don't put me down. You stay here. You be with me. I am terrified. And she goes, and he won't let go. And a highway patrolman comes over to look at him and triage and make sure, see what his injuries are. And she's down there with him. And he's like, please don't, that image is forever in me. That's that poor little kid, no fault of his own, obviously, is in a horrible situation. And he's like, please don't. And she didn't. She stayed with him. And that, I don't know if he remembers it, but I'm pretty sure it was PJ Allen, who was one of the 6 survivors. And that's the one image that sticks with me.
Do you have anything else you want to add to it?
What I was telling you earlier, interesting thing, when they allegedly found a second bomb, and everybody's running out of the building, running past me. Here comes Roger Wagner, who's PIO for the police department. Get out of here, go away. Well, I was attached to the live truck, but I couldn't go anywhere without disconnecting the camera, and I can't do that while I'm live. And so I'm going toward the building, and everybody else is going away from the building. And what I did not know at the time is my mom and my brother were watching that live on TV. And another crew that was live was broadcasting that, and they both saw me on camera. And my mom later told me, and I did not know this until a couple of nights ago when I was talking to my brother. He said, I saw you on TV. And but my mom made it very apparent when she could finally call me. She said, I saw you on TV. Don't you ever do that again. And she said, I cried. I was at work and I cried, and everybody asked me, why are you crying? She said, I just saw my son, and they found a second bomb. And that brought my family into it in that capacity. And so that also, I was like, just doing my job, Mom. That was it.